Thank you for the introduction. Again, welcome to another Rubrik Design Talk. My name is Danqing, but for those who know me, I'm just DQ. So today's topic is slightly more personal as compared to our previous talks. I want to share with you my journey to becoming a more resourceful, resilient, and just more confident designer in the organization. And hopefully this can also help some of you avoid certain pitfalls that I've encountered along the way. So in my few years working as a product designer, I've come across many different types of design problems. Some of them are rather familiar. They can be resolved with just standard workflows or existing design patterns. Some of them are more interesting. They usually have a twist in their use cases or requirements and do require further thoughts and more iterations to get to the right solution. But some of them are just wicked. They're very complex, they are chaotic, and sometimes they may seem impossible to solve. I happened to came across such a problem earlier, and to be honest, I feel both blessed and damned by working on that project because it was hard. It was really hard at the time for me. But without that project, I wouldn't be able to grow so quickly and just stand here give you the talk today. So I do hope that for my peers, this is good information and maybe inspiration. And for those more experienced ones out there, I hope that this can be a conversation starter for us to start talking about how we, as designers, can help change, initiate change, not only within the organization, but also on the user side. So the main problem that we were tackling at the time was how could we migrate over 4,000 customers from our old solution, CDM, Cloud Data Management, to our new SaaS solution, Rubrik Security Cloud, RSC. And for those who are not familiar with the Rubrik products, simply imagine that you are moving houses for over 4,000 households. Some of them may be the size of a dorm room. Some of them can be just gigantic castles. But besides the complexity, what makes this problem truly wicked in nature is that it appeared to be a simple problem, a pretty simple one from the start. When I got this project, the team assumed that maybe the design work is only going to take about a week's time because what we need was just temporary dashboards, or maybe just one of them, to let users know where they are in their whole journey of migration. And we say that it is temporary because after the migration, it is simply useless, so you can just discard it. Knowing that, and knowing all other constraints that we had for that project at the time, and knowing that you usually don't get optimal user experience and great speed of implementation for the same project at the same time, we decided to just prioritize speed over user experience. Well, it does seem valid to me at the time, and I was rather uninformed of the possible challenges down the line. So I just said sure to the group decision. But what I did not know at the time was the scale, complexity, and the sheer amount of stakeholders that I would be interacting with after that. And just to let you know that what you're looking at is not our final design, but at one point, some users need to go through 13 different flows to complete their migration journey. It was daunting, but today I do want to show you the evolution of our end-to-end migration experience and tell you the problems and challenges we faced along the line. And I would want to demonstrate that with the iterations that we've done for one of the workloads, NAS hosts, that's network attached storage, just simply another workload that Rubrik protects. So the migration for NAS actually started way earlier than the initiation of the whole CDM to RSC migration. Actually, I got it as a regular project on my product roadmap. And I was working with this familiar group of PM and engineers. The requirements and scope seems pretty clear. So I was pretty confident at the very beginning. But as I designed on, a worry started forming at the back of my head. It was a fully manual flow. We allow users to select what they want to migrate and open a wizard to guide them through it. We tell them that certain things can't be migrated because of these problems. but we do not offer them assistance in troubleshooting. In fact, they couldn't really do much for certain errors just because of our system limitations. So that was not a great experience. That's what I told myself. But what could I do? I simply accepted the fact that the experts on my team must know better. Things must have been validated, so I should just accept the design requirement and just design based on the requirements that I got. But if I were to work on it again, I wouldn't just accept those facts so easily. I would ask questions when I have doubts. I would question the desirability, the necessity, simplicity of the proposed solution. I would ask, are these assumptions validated with proper research? And the very fact that I'm paid to be a UX designer at this organization gives me the qualification and makes me responsible to just ask those product-related questions. Because even though I am not the product owner, knowing the answers to those facts would make me more confident down the line and simply make me give me the peace of mind. But the reality was, at the time, the team took my designs of the fully manual flow and went on developing. Right around the time where we were about to launch, we got notified, hey, this project is going to merge into the larger CDM to RSC migration initiative, which I happen to be the designer as well. And as I started to understand the scope and requirements of the bigger project, I realized that we need to revamp the old designs that I have done, simply because we need to make sure it is consistent, the experience is consistent across different workflows. Not only that, I suddenly realized that I was talking to a lot more people. I started finding myself buried in different messages, and I was just struggling to just keep conversation going with almost at the time, seemingly everyone who's working on this project. It was overwhelming. And it was only about after a year when I learned more about project management did I realize that I might be treating this project wrongly from the very beginning. This is not a regular feature rollout that I'm used to. In fact, this is a horizontal initiative, a short-term project where people are pulled from their respective teams and gather together to get things done. So in fact, I was getting used to a new team structure and a whole group of new people. The so-called forming, storming, norming, and performing stages actually unfold very vividly in front of my eyes. And me just being who I am, I'm very used to working with small and agile teams. I love to get to know everyone a little bit and just be friends, which makes things easier in the past. But as things scale, I realized that my old strategy stopped working simply because my time is not scalable. I realized that now I needed to manage my stakeholders differently. This time in bulk. I need to classify them based on their power, interest, influence, relevancy, or maybe urgency related to this project. I started to become more formal in my communications and started tagging all the people responsible for the action items in the threads. I'm still straightforward and to the point, but I do double check that the messages came across correctly in my conversations more often. And I also realized that I could not just depend on making friends to make things move forward. I actually need to establish credibility, demonstrate reliability as a design counterpart, often in group settings. And sometimes asking the tough but right questions would help me do the trick. And another important realization I had was the necessity of boundaries. I think I'm a pretty nice person, but I can't just assume responsibilities and make people have the impression that this is within my job scope. I need to focus on my priorities, that is design, because I'm a product designer at the end of the day. And I'm also keenly aware that this blur boundary issue may be a result of multiple factors, but I need to be my own rigid line of defense. I need to know very clearly what's within my job scope, what's not, and when I am actually doing a favor for my team. last point that I realized at this stage was I do need to make decisions when all relevant stakeholders are represented in conversations or meetings, because we can't just leave someone uninformed and move forward and assume that people will catch up. That's when good documentation and timely conversation come in handy. And the very first group decision we made was agreeing on a design framework before diving into the detailed designs for each workflow. At the time, we realized that different workflows may have different kinds of instructions and steps for users to follow. So we simply thought, okay, let's just list all the instructions there, and user will read them, and they will follow them to perform the right actions. However, when we brought this thing to user research, we got pretty negative feedbacks. We realized that in many cases, this one-size-fits-all solution doesn't work, especially for NAS hosts, because in this particular workflow, user actually needs to jump across 3 different pages and do something in every single page to complete their whole task. But as a user, their intuition was to just go click the big green button on the bottom, and they struggle with finding how they should navigate to different pages to complete the workflow. And there was just a general confusion or a lack of motivation to even start migrating. Some of the users told us that they were comfortable with where they were, with what they had, and they were simply reluctant to change. So it struck the team that, okay, our users already have a lot of things to do, and we were just adding complexity plus ambiguity on their pile, and that didn't help. We needed to understand how they usually plan their migration, or maybe just a simple upgrade. And sometimes we realize that things on the screen just may not be as convincing or trustworthy as a real person. So we do need to jump outside of the box of design and find alternative solutions to help us move our users to the new platform. So for in-product improvements, we decided to make all the links the primary CTA buttons and disclose information to the user progressively. Now users focus on completing one step at each screen, and they would be guided throughout the whole flow. With this change, things did start improving, but not really the team morale, because as I mentioned, this is a very large-scale problem, but we were still functioning in the agile way. So we do welcome changes. And sometimes those changes happen on a weekly basis. So this back and forth has tired people out. And right around that time, we had a PM transition. So we were led by another PM, and there are revisits to past decisions, product decisions. So as a designer, I also realized that we are actually offering very visual and relatively easy to change representations of our final deliverables to the team. So I got involved in a lot of heated discussions about what we should do to move user to the new solution. And later I realized I actually got product questions from engineering and technical questions from support team. And being the only designer in the room and in the meetings, I feel that I'm just being showered by bullets of questions, which can be helpless sometimes, and I don't have the right answers to them. That was very stressful. And after several moments of that, I realized that I do need to seek allies and support, and I do need to feel backed in these situations so that I can reply to questions more calmly and direct people to the right person to get the right answers. And out of the need of, let's say, self-preservation, I started asking for help. But trust me, it takes me so much courage to open my mouth and say, help. But I was lucky at the time. I did find help and support and good advice from people around me, from my project teams, from my product design teams, as well as just in general in life. And I also realized the power of relational power. I do not need to be the expert in all things. I do not need to be the driver of every single design-related details of the project. What I needed to do was to find the right persons and ask that can we push forward this agenda with joint efforts because we have common interest in this. And of course, this alliance and support should be reciprocal. So I did try my best to offer support, at least mental support for my team during this whole journey. And with such camaraderie, we pushed forward. So things weren't smooth sailing, 100%, but it was generally on an upward trend. Our small customers with simple workloads actually felt very comfortable just moving everything in our platform. But for the medium and larger customers, they were still reluctant because they were not so sure about the consequences they would have and the possible challenges that they would face down the line. So they were still hesitant. So we decided to divide and conquer. That's when we took a strategic pivot and decided to break our customers into different cohorts. And initially, I said that we focused on speed. Now we realize that user experience is paramount to the success of our project because without the right experience, people do not even want to start changing. And in fact, when we break down people into different cohorts, the problems become simpler and they can have a more focused view. To make things even easier, we also started thinking about automating the whole experience for NAS migration. And of course, this is after talking to engineering and getting enough investment from their side. We decided that we will automate the flow for majority of our users. However, if you really want to take full control, we still allow you to opt in for the manual flow. And for the users who chose the default automated flow, we only trigger the migration after getting your consent. We will also alert you with success messages and error messages to keep you in loop of where we are in our progress. Besides in-product improvement, we also brought in external support. So we got assistance from teams such as support, customer success management. So just like how you hire moving companies when you are moving your big house. We also offer a white glove experience for customers who have extremely complicated setup or are simply hesitant to start migrating because they don't know how, when, or what they should migrate. And when we break down big problems into small problems, to our surprise, much of the wickedness we found earlier actually disappeared. At least for majority of our users, they ended up just migrating everything with 3 to 4 flows that we've seen earlier. And I also realized that design is not a panacea. It's not something that can cure all problems. I need to jump out of the box and realize that this is only a means to the end to achieve our business goals. So today, our migration effort is still ongoing, but we have already migrated over 70% of our customers. They started enjoying the single pane of glass experience we have on RSC, which means that you can view and manage all your workloads, configurations, snapshots, and all your analysis all in one place. And when I look back at this rather long and meandering journey, I think it is okay that I learned my lessons in the hard way because some of the points that I talked about, I've came across them earlier in books, conversations, podcasts, and just simply from my past experiences. But I truly felt the pain when I was working on that project. And that was what motivated me to start changing in the way that I work and in the way that I work with other people. And if there's one thing that I want to keep reminding myself after this project, or maybe you should also remind yourself in your future challenges, is you don't always need to be the hero or the heroine in design projects. Because besides ourselves, we can also establish good process and try to rely on those process, the network, the team we have. And last but not least, I want to remind myself, and I also want to remind you, that we are very brave when we ask for help. We are also brave when we stand up and ask challenging questions. With that, I end my presentation. I wish you all a good day, good night, and just design on. Thank you.
Great presentation.